Before we begin, I want to ask you something. Have you ever given everything, your youth, your strength, your love, to your own child, only to be treated like a guest in the very home you built? This isn't a story about strangers. It's about a mother, a daughter, and a house filled with memories, turned into a place where love was replaced with rules, silence, and humiliation. She baked the cookies, watered the garden, folded the laundry. She thought she was helping her family. But little did she know, they were slowly helping her disappear. Until one day, after the funeral of the only man who ever held her with kindness, her daughter looked her in the eye and said, "You don't belong here. Leave, or I'll call the police." But what they didn't know was this: the woman they treated like a burden still owned the land beneath their feet. So sit with me, because this is not just a story of betrayal. It's the quiet, powerful revenge of a mother they pushed too far, and the day she stopped begging to stay and chose to walk away. Have you ever stood in a room full of people you helped raise, fed, clothed, cared for, and suddenly realized you were invisible to them? That was the moment it began for me. Not the shouting or the threats, that would come later. No, this was quieter, sharper. It was a warm Saturday in Redwood Hills, the kind of sun-soaked California town where orange blossoms scented the breeze and neighbors waved across picket fences. My daughter, Marissa, was hosting one of her elegant weekend gatherings. Soft jazz playing from outdoor speakers, tall glasses of chilled white wine glistening in the sun, and guests drifting around the patio as though they belonged to some magazine cover. And as always, I was in the kitchen, hands deep in flour, shaping the lemon butter cookies I'd made every spring since Marissa was a little girl. No one asked me to bake, I just did. It was habit, it was love. It was the only part of me that still felt useful in that house. I wiped my hands on my apron, placed the cookies neatly on a silver tray, and carried them outside with a small smile. "Fresh cookies," I said softly. For a moment, the group turned their heads, took one politely, and murmured their thanks. And then, she said it. Not loudly, not cruelly, but casually, as if she were commenting on the weather. Marissa pointed towards me with her wine glass and said to her friends, "Oh, don't mind her. She just stays with us and helps around. Kinda keeps busy, I guess. Just stays, helps, around." The words floated in the air like insects. The guests laughed, not because it was funny, but because they didn't know what else to do. I smiled, but my fingers trembled, and I prayed no one saw the way my heart cracked quietly in my chest. One woman asked if I made the cookies from a store mix. I only nodded and walked back into the house. No one stopped me. No one said, "She's my mother," or "She built this home." Not even Eric, my son-in-law, who simply looked away. For the rest of the evening, I washed dishes in silence, listening to muffled laughter through the patio door. By the time the guests left, the skies had turned a pale blue-gray, and Marissa's heels clicked up the stairs without a word. Only Eric muttered, "Thanks, Evelyn," like I was the help they underpaid. Not mom, not mother. Evelyn, my name, detached, cold. I stood in the quiet kitchen until the clock struck midnight, my reflection staring back at me from the dark window. Tired eyes, flour on my apron, a woman no one saw anymore. But sometimes, the softest heartbreak is the one that changes you the most. Not with a scream, but with a quiet decision. Because what Marissa didn't know, what no one in that house cared to ask, was that I still held something far more powerful than their approval. Something they assumed I'd forgotten, the deed to the house they lived in, the legacy their father and I built from scratch. And while they laughed, I remembered. But the real breaking point didn't come with laughter. It came 3 days later, with shattered glass, a raised voice, and the words that finally pushed me out. They thought she wouldn't hear it, but humiliation has a way of echoing, even when spoken behind a polite smile. The afternoon sun draped itself over the backyard like a warm blanket. Glasses clinked, laughter floated in the air, and polished conversations circled around real estate, Pilates, and private schools. But Evelyn stood just beyond the noise, not invited, not excluded, simply ignored. She stepped outside holding a tray of freshly baked shortbread cookies, the same recipe her mother taught her, the same ones her late husband loved with his tea. The guests glanced over, offering polite smiles as they reached for one. And then her daughter, Lauren, laughed and said casually to her friends, "Oh, don't mind her. She just kinda stays here." As if Evelyn were part of the furniture. Not a mother, not a widow, just something that came with the house. The laughter that followed wasn't loud, but it was enough to burn. Evelyn didn't cry. She didn't drop the tray. She just nodded gently and walked back inside. That night, long after the dishes were washed and the guests had gone home, she stood alone in the kitchen. Her daughter never apologized. Her son-in-law never looked her in the eye. The dishwasher hummed, the world moved on, but inside, something in Evelyn shifted. She didn't have the words for it yet, but silence was no longer peace. It was a cage. She could have forgotten that moment. But then, 3 days later, one broken glass changed everything, and for the first time her daughter threatened to call the cops. But the real breaking point didn't come with laughter. It came 3 days later with shattered glass, a raised voice, and the words that finally pushed me out. Do you know that moment when someone you love looks at you and no longer sees you? Not a mother, not a human being, just an inconvenience in their perfect life? That was the morning everything shifted. It was quiet in the kitchen. Sunlight spilled across the countertops the way it did when my husband Paul used to sit at the table with his newspaper and black coffee. I reached up for a ceramic mug, and in my clumsy haste, I knocked over a tall glass. It shattered across the tile floor, sharp, loud, unforgiving. I whispered to myself, "It's okay, just a glass." But before I could kneel to clean it up, I heard her, "What did you do now?" Lauren's voice sliced through the silence. I turned, glass in my hands, heart pounding like a frightened bird. "I'm sorry, She raised her hand to quiet me. "You should know your place by now," she said, eyes cold as marble. "This isn't your house. This is mine and Eric's. You're just staying here." Her words cut deeper than the glass in my palms. I stood still, tiny cuts forming on my fingertips, but I didn't feel them. She wasn't done. "You think because you're old, you're automatically owed respect? You think cleaning dishes and baking cookies makes you part of this home?" She scoffed. "You're lucky we let you stay." Lucky? That word echoed in my bones. I opened my mouth to speak, not to argue, but to remind her softly that I was her mother. But before I could, she stepped closer and hissed, "If you don't like it, get out. I'll call the police if I have to." I stared at her, at the girl I once held through thunderstorms, the girl who used to fall asleep on my chest while I hummed lullabies. Now she stood tall, unshaking, phone already in hand, like I was a trespasser in my own story, and in that moment, something inside me stopped breaking and turned to stone instead. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I quietly put the glass pieces in a dustpan, washed the blood from my fingers and walked out into the garden. My rosemary bushes, the daisies, the soil I turned with my own hands. They stood there, unchanged, the only place left in this world that still felt like mine. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't going to beg anymore. I wasn't going to wait for kindness that wasn't coming. This house, this life, they thought it belonged to them, but they forgot one thing. The deed, the title, the land beneath their feet was still mine. And for the first time in a long while, I felt awake. Not young, not strong, just awake. But here's the thing, what I did next. It wasn't loud, it wasn't angry, it was quiet, calculated, final. What would you do if your own child threatened to call the police on you? In the house you built, would you walk away? Or would you take everything back, silently? It's strange how the walls of a house can hold a lifetime of memories. You can scrub them, repaint them, even replace the windows, but they still remember everything. And I remember too, the very house my daughter now ruled over was once nothing but peeling wallpaper, cracked wood, and dream-filled dust. It was 1983 when Paul and I first unlocked that creaky front door. The kitchen smelled like mildew, the floors sagged in places, and yet Paul smiled wider than he did on our wedding day. "She's got potential," he whispered, patting the doorframe like it was a living thing. That house didn't come from inheritance or luck. It came from long shifts, missed vacations, cheap dinners, and hope. Paul took extra HVAC repair calls. I worked late at the library, sorting books by night, sewing clothes by dawn. And slowly the house became a home. Not a perfect one, but ours. Lauren was 6 when she painted her first wall. Mint green, a little too thick in places, but her laugh filled the room as she left tiny handprints on the trim. "Don't wipe it," Paul said. "It's better than wallpaper." That same living room, where I once rocked her to sleep in a thrift store rocking chair, was where she later introduced me to her fiancé, Eric. I served lemonade, smiling quietly while she beamed with pride. She called me Mama then, soft, loving. Funny how titles can disappear without funerals. Years passed. Life tugged at us from different directions. Paul got sick, slowly at first, a cough, fatigue, then the diagnosis we didn't say out loud at dinner. I turned the den into a bedroom for him because stairs made him dizzy. I held his hand on his final morning, whispering prayers into his thinning hair. After the funeral, the house felt too big, too quiet. Every room echoed with him. I'd catch myself setting 2 plates at dinner. I was haunted by love. When Lauren suggested I move in with her and Eric, I thought maybe this was what family did, pull each other close when one falls apart. I rented the house out but never transferred ownership. I kept the deed tucked carefully between Paul's letters and our wedding photographs. Just in case. At first, moving into Lauren's home felt like a warm blanket around cold shoulders. She brought me tea. Eric carried boxes. She said, "You're not alone anymore, Mom." But little by little, I stopped being Mom. I became Evelyn, then her. Then eventually, nothing, my house, the one with our sweat in the floorboards and laughter in the walls, became nothing more than an address on a lease to her, a source of money, a silent witness, and even when she stood in her bright kitchen years later, threatening to call the police if I didn't leave, even when she forgot every lullaby I sang, every meal I cooked, every sacrifice I made, the house remembered, and so did I, because while she was busy assuming I was powerless, I still owned the very ground she stood on. She thought pushing me out was the end of my story, but it was only the beginning. What do you think happened when she learned the house was still legally mine? Do you know what it feels like to live in a house, but not be allowed to exist in it? To walk on eggshells in rooms you cleaned, to whisper in hallways you paid for, to feel like a visitor in the life you built? That became my everyday. Lauren and Eric never said it outright at first. It was subtle, like a slow tightening of invisible ropes. Could you not cook with garlic? The smell lingers. Maybe don't water the plants on the patio, it looks cluttered. Don't stay in the living room too late. We like our quiet time. I nodded. I understood, or at least I thought I did. After all, it was their house now, wasn't it? Until one day, standing at the sink, I realized I couldn't remember the last time someone called me Mom. I was just there, quiet, useful, forgettable. I folded their laundry, watered their roses, packed lunches when they were late, ironed shirts before their meetings, all without being asked, not because they expected, but because I didn't know how not to help. That's what mothers do, right? We care until we disappear. But one night changed everything. It was late, almost midnight. I tiptoed downstairs to warm some milk, hoping it would help me sleep. The lights were low and I could hear Lauren and Eric talking in the living room. I should have turned back. Instead, I stood in the shadows, holding my glass. "She's always here," Lauren whispered sharply. "Just around, cleaning like a ghost." Eric sighed. "She means well. She's exhausting," Lauren continued. "Like emotional clutter. I can't breathe in my own house. Emotional clutter. That's what I was now. Not mother, not human, just clutter." I stood there for a long moment, hands trembling. Not from anger, but from a strange kind of clarity. I wasn't wanted. I was simply tolerated. A background character in a life I helped build. But I stayed silent. Because silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's the moment before a storm. Days passed. The rules got sharper. Don't touch this. Don't move that. Stay out of the dining area when guests come over. It's awkward. But I wasn't angry. I was awake. Then came the moment I would never forget. At a dinner with Eric's business friends, I made roast chicken, mashed potatoes, fresh rolls. My best effort. One man laughed and said, "This is incredible, Lauren. Did you cook it?" And she, the daughter I raised, smirked and said, "Oh no, that's just our resident freeloader. Cooking's the least she can do since she lives here rent-free." Laughter, awkward, shallow, followed. My heart didn't break, it hardened, because a mother knows when she stopped being loved and started being used. And right there, in the soft clinking of silverware and shallow laughter, I made a quiet promise to myself. I won't beg for space in a house that still belongs to me. She thought I would stay silent forever, but what she didn't know was that I still held the deed, and soon I would hold the power. Want to hear how everything changed? There are moments in life when silence stops being peaceful, when it turns into a weight you carry in your bones. That's how I felt the night Lauren called me a freeloader in front of her guests. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply remembered. remembered whose name was still on the title, whose hands planted the garden, who signed the mortgage papers in 1983 when the bank told us we couldn't afford it. Paul and I fought for that house, brick by brick, paycheck by paycheck. My name wasn't just on the mailbox, it was on the deed, and yet, there I was, being fed rules in my own legacy. But the day Lauren made her biggest mistake, it wasn't loud, it didn't start with yelling, it started with a folder, a gray, expensive-looking folder she placed on the table one morning as I was folding laundry. "Mom," she said too politely, "I need you to sign some papers, just a quick formality. It's about the house." My fingers froze over Eric's shirts. "What about the house?" She smiled, rehearsed and tight. "It's easier if it's legally in my name. For refinancing, taxes. You don't have to worry. You'll still live here, of course." "Still live here? In my house?" I set the laundry down. "No," I said softly, "I won't sign." Her smile cracked. "It's just paperwork," she insisted. "Walter can notarize it. You don't even need to leave the house." "No," I said again. Something cold flashed in her eyes. She snatched the folder and walked away. I thought that was the end. I was wrong. A week later, I got a call from the bank. "Mrs. Collins? We have a few questions about the mortgage application filed under your address. Are you transferring ownership to Lauren Daniels?" My heart stopped. "I am not," I said quietly. The banker hesitated. "Ma'am, there are documents here listing your daughter as the new homeowner, with your signature." "My signature?" My hands shook. "Email it to me, now." When I opened the attachment, I saw it all. My name, sloppily copied, her name, bold and proud, fake signatures, false claims that I was mentally unfit, and she was taking financial responsibility as a caregiver. She hadn't just disrespected me. She tried to erase me. That night, I stood in the doorway of her perfect white kitchen. She was pouring sparkling water into a crystal glass when I said, "I know what you did." She didn't look up. "You shouldn't be digging around in things you don't understand. You forged my signature." She set the glass down. "You're old, Mom. You don't work. You don't contribute. You just exist. Eric and I take care of everything. You call this care?" She stepped closer, eyes cold. "You're lucky you're even here. You're nothing without this house. And this house is not yours anymore." I said nothing. But I was no longer breaking. I was planning. She thought I wouldn't fight back. But she forgot one thing. I still owned the house. And soon, she'd learn what happens when a quiet woman finally stands up. Have you ever stayed up so late that your heartbeat feels louder than the clock on the wall? That was me, sitting on the edge of the guest bed, hands clasped, staring at the door I no longer felt safe behind. Lauren's words replayed over and over. "You don't own this house. You're just existing here. Sign the papers. Or get out." But she was wrong. I didn't just exist here. I built here, bled here, loved here. And while she plotted to take everything, I quietly prepared to walk away, with everything she thought was already hers. That night, I opened the old cedar chest at the foot of my bed. It smelled faintly of lavender and thyme. Inside were the things I never showed anyone. The real things. The deed to the house, still in my name. The original mortgage papers, signed by Paul and me in 1983. Property tax receipts, everyone, paid by us, not her, and tucked beneath it all. My wedding photo, Paul in his navy suit, me in Mama's hand-sewn dress, happy, certain. I packed them into a worn leather folder, the same one Paul used to keep important documents in. Then I opened my closet and pulled out the small gray suitcase, the one I never thought I'd use again. Only what mattered went inside. 2 dresses, a sweater, toothbrush, the silver locket Paul bought me for our 10th anniversary, and the papers that proved I was not weak, not lost, and certainly not finished. And then, I wrote the note, just one small sheet of paper left on the kitchen counter, beneath the porcelain teapot she never touched. "Lauren, I'm not being pushed out of a life I built. I'm choosing to step away from one that no longer sees me. You may keep the house keys. The house itself, that was never yours to begin with. Mom, no anger, no accusations, just truth." At 3:17 a.m., I slipped out the back door. No footsteps followed. No voice called after me. Not even the dog barked. I walked through the garden one last time, my rosemary bushes, my daisies, the soil still damp from yesterday's watering. I whispered, "Thank you," to the earth I had cared for more faithfully than my own daughter cared for me. Then I left. I didn't look back. The taxi driver didn't ask questions. He glanced at my bruised heart in the rearview mirror and said only, "Where to, ma'am?" "Somewhere quiet," I whispered. By sunrise, I was sitting on a stiff motel bed, holding a cup of cheap coffee, staring at the folder in my lap, the one thing that meant she hadn't taken everything. She just thought she had. And that was her biggest mistake, because now, I wasn't just a quiet mother. I was a woman with proof, a plan, and the deed she thought I left defeated. But what she didn't know? I was already calling a lawyer and a realtor. Everything she stood on was about to crumble, and I wouldn't even raise my voice. Some people think revenge is loud, shouted, slammed, dramatic. But when a mother's heart is broken by her own child, revenge doesn't roar. It whispers, it signs documents, it changes titles. That morning, after leaving Lauren's house for the last time, I sat in a quiet motel off the highway. The wallpaper was peeling, the air conditioner rattled, and the coffee tasted like burnt memories, but it was the first place in months where I could breathe. At 9:02 a.m., I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. "Walter?" I said softly. There was a pause, then a familiar old voice answered. "Evelyn? Are you all right?" "No," I whispered, "but I will be." Walter Brenner wasn't just an attorney. He was my husband's best friend since high school. He stood at our wedding, he carried Paul's casket, and even in his retirement he still handled a few things for old friends. He didn't ask questions on the phone. He simply said, "Come by at 10. His house smelled like lemon polish and old books. Papers cluttered the dining table, and his glasses sat crooked on the bridge of his nose as he looked over the documents I brought. The deed, tax receipts, Paul's signature. Proof of everything? Walter flipped through the pages slowly, his eyebrows lowered, his lips pressed tight. "She tried to take it from you?" he said quietly. "She did more than try," I replied. "She forged my name." Walter exhaled sharply. "She can't win this. You're the sole legal owner. No power of attorney, no transfer, nothing. The law is on your side. I don't want to fight her," I said. "I want to end this." He looked up. "Meaning?" "I want to sell it, Walter. The house, all of it." He leaned back in his chair. "Are you sure?" "Yes, before she takes what's left of my dignity with it." Walter nodded slowly and pulled out a fresh legal pad. "All right, then here's what we'll do." The plan was simple, but surgical. Step 1, secure the title legally, fast. Step 2, list the property privately. No open houses, no neighborhood gossip. Step 3, transfer the funds directly to me. No way for Lauren to claim a cent. Step 4, serve her with legal notice after the sale closes. Not before. In silence, I signed more papers than I could count, each one a stitch in a torn heart. By the time I left Walter's house, the sun was high and the world was moving as if nothing had changed. But everything had. That afternoon, I walked into a small real estate office owned by Jessica Tran, a woman I'd known since she was a girl doing homework in the library where I used to work. She didn't ask why my hands were shaking. She just brought me tea and said, "Tell me what you need." I told her. She didn't blink. "I'll have it listed by morning," she said. "No sign out front, discreet only, just like you asked." For the first time in months, I felt like someone was on my side. The listing went live the next day, and by sunset, 3 people already wanted to buy my house. But what do you think happened when Lauren found out? From a stranger. She had no idea the ground beneath her feet was already sold, while she was busy planning her next insult. The sun had barely risen the next morning when Jessica, the realtor, sent me a short message. "It's Liv. No emojis, no extra words, just certainty. My house, the house, was officially listed for private sale." Jessica moved with a quiet kind of precision. No for sale sign on the lawn, no open house balloons, just private calls to serious, wealthy buyers, the kind who didn't haggle, didn't waste time. By noon, she had already shown the property virtually to 2 out-of-state buyers. By 3 p.m., she walked another interested couple through the rose-lined path I once planted with my own hands. It was strange, seeing my home in her photos. The kitchen where Paul kissed my cheek while I cooked. The window where I once rocked a feverish Lauren to sleep. It wasn't mine in pictures anymore. But on paper? Oh, it was still mine. At exactly 4:17 p.m., Jessica called. Her voice was calm, but I heard the excitement beneath it. "Evelyn," she said, "we already have 3 offers." all above asking. 3? I whispered. Yes, 1 all cash. 1 wants to tear it down and rebuild. 1, a woman named Diane, wants to live there. And she wrote a note. She lost her husband too. I closed my eyes. Diane, a stranger, but already I liked her. Choose with your heart, Jessica said gently, not just your wallet. So I did. I picked Diane. By 6 p.m., I signed the contract on Jessica's tablet. My hand didn't shake. My initials carved the end of a chapter and the beginning of a new one. By law, the house was no longer mine, but it also wasn't hers. Not anymore. Lauren still didn't know. She was probably at home, walking across my hardwood floors, sipping tea at my kitchen table, humming to herself, thinking she was untouchable. She had no idea that while she scrolled through social media, movers were soon to be hired, that the home she mocked me in, laughed at me in, would no longer answer to her name. That night, I sat in my motel room watching the ceiling, feeling neither joy nor guilt, just peace. For the first time in a long while, silence didn't hurt. The next morning, at 8:30 a.m. sharp, a courier rang the doorbell of her pristine suburban home. Inside the envelope, final sale documents, transfer of ownership, 7-day notice to vacate. The sender name wasn't Mom. It was simply E.M. Collins, but peace never lasts long. Because within hours, my phone buzzed over and over with one name, Lauren. What do you think she said when she realized she had nowhere to go? The first time she called, I almost answered. Not because I felt guilty, but because I wanted to hear the moment she realized the house wasn't hers anymore. The legal documents had been delivered by courier at 8:30 a.m. Sharp, not a handwritten note, not a mother's apology, just cold, silent truth on official stationery. Transfer of ownership, final, new owner, Diane Westfield, current occupants, 7 days to vacate. Sender, M. Collins. I imagined her standing in the foyer, still in her silk robe, coffee in hand, eyebrows tightening as the realization sank in. The house she flaunted, the one she declared wasn't mine, was no longer hers either, and no matter how many times she read it, the ink didn't change. At 9:02 a.m., my phone rang. Lauren. I didn't answer. 9:17 a.m. She called again. 9:25, 9:40, 10:03. Each time my phone lit up and went dark again. No voicemail, no apology, just control slipping through her fingers. But she didn't stop. At 11:12 a.m., she finally left one. Her voice was tight, frantic, like someone watching a life they weren't prepared to lose. Mom, what did you do? You can't sell this house. It's our home. My things are here. Eric's things are here. You're overreacting. Call me back. Now. Our home. Not your house, Mother. Not I'm sorry. Just panic wearing entitlement like perfume. I turned the phone face down and let the silence answer for me. By noon, the calls slowed, but the storm had only begun. Because she didn't just call me, she called the realtor. Jessica later told me. She tried to convince me the sale was a mistake. She said you weren't in your right mind, that she was the real owner. I told her, politely, that all documents were verified by the county. She hung up. Then she called Walter. He didn't pick up. By 2 p.m., she drove to the county office. They confirmed the transfer was legal and irreversible. By 3 p.m., the neighbors were whispering. By 4 p.m., she called again, this time her voice breaking. Mom, please, what are we supposed to do? For a split second, I felt my heart crack. Not for the woman she was now, but for the little girl she used to be. The one who brought me dandelions and said, Mama, look, I picked this for you. But then I remembered the glass shards on the kitchen floor, her voice saying, you don't belong here. Her finger on the phone ready to call the police on me, and the crack in my heart, sealed. So I let the phone keep ringing, not out of hate, out of healing, because sometimes the strongest thing a mother can do is walk away before she's destroyed. But she didn't stop at phone calls. That night, she showed up at my door, eyes swollen, voice shaking. Do you think I let her in? I always thought betrayal hurt most when it was loud. But that night, it knocked softly on my door. It was a little past 9 p.m. My new apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like a blanket rather than a cage. I had made myself a cup of chamomile and mint tea, the same blend Paul used to make when storms rattled the windows. I finally felt safe. Then came the buzz, not my phone, the intercom. I walked to the panel by the door, pressed the small button, and there she was, Lauren, her face grainy in the dim light of the security camera. No perfect makeup, no polished voice, just red eyes, trembling lips, and a coat thrown over what looked like pajamas. "Mom," she whispered into the speaker, her voice thin from crying. "Please, can you let me inside?" For a moment I didn't speak. I just watched her through the monitor. She wasn't the woman who called me useless. She wasn't the voice that said, "Get out or I'll call the cops." She looked like a child again, lost, cold, scared. "I have nowhere to go," she said. "Eric left. He went to his mother's. He won't answer my calls. I don't know what to do." Her breath trembled in the cold. She glanced over her shoulder at the empty street, as if expecting someone to show up and save her. But the thing is, she had spent years digging at me, taking from me, laughing behind my back, never thinking the well would run dry, and now she was thirsty for kindness. I stepped onto the balcony above the entrance, looking down at her from the 24th floor. She saw me and her face lit up, not with arrogance this time, but hope. "Mom, please." The wind tugged at my sweater. The city lights flickered like 1,000 quiet witnesses. I held onto the railing and asked softly, "Do you remember the night you threatened to call the police on me?" She froze. "I didn't mean, but you did," I said. "And you meant it." She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand, smudging her mascara. "You're my mother," she said. "You're supposed to help me." I felt those words land in my chest, not like knives, but like reminders. I am her mother. But I am also a woman, a human, one who bleeds, remembers, and finally chose herself. "I did help you," I said quietly. "For years, I gave you everything, my time, my money, my hands, my heart, and you mistook that for weakness." She shook her head. Tears streamed freely now. "Please, I just need a place to sleep, just tonight." I looked at her for a long time, not the way a mother looks at a child, but the way a soul looks at another soul asking for forgiveness without earning it. Then, I stepped back, and I closed the curtain, not angrily, not dramatically, just, finally. But that wasn't the end, because the next morning she returned, not begging, not crying. This time, she brought a lawyer. When tears didn't work, she came back with something colder, legal threats. The next morning, the sky was pale and heavy with clouds. I sat by the window of my new apartment, sipping tea and reading the newspaper, trying to believe peace was real. The quiet didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. At 10:06 a.m., the building's receptionist called me. "Mrs. Collins," she said cautiously, "your daughter is here again, and she's brought someone with her." I didn't rush. I folded the newspaper neatly, set my teacup in the sink, and walked downstairs. There she was, Lauren, no tears this time. Her face was freshly powdered, lips painted, and beside her stood a man in a navy suit holding a leather briefcase. "Mom," she said, voice stiff, "we need to talk." The man stepped forward. "Mrs. Collins, I'm attorney David Hale. Your daughter tells me there may have been a misunderstanding regarding the sale of a property." I didn't let him finish. "There was no misunderstanding," I said calmly. "The house legally belonged to me. It was sold legally. And the funds are in my account. There is nothing else to discuss." Lauren's jaw tightened. "You sold my home without telling me." "Your home?" I repeated softly. "Or the home you wanted everyone to believe was yours?" Her lawyer cleared his throat. "Mrs. Collins, your daughter has been residing there and contributing to its maintenance for years. We believe she may have a claim under implied." I pulled out a folded envelope from my bag. Documents Walter prepared. Title deed from 1983. Mortgage statements. Property taxes paid by me and only me. Proof of ownership. And, I paused, bank records showing attempts to fraudulently gain a home equity loan using forged documents. Attorney Hale blinked. Lauren's face drained of color. "I imagine," I continued, "you didn't tell your lawyer about that part." He shifted uncomfortably. "Lauren, is that true?" She didn't answer. I stepped forward, not with anger but dignity. "You wanted me gone. You told me I didn't belong in my own house, so I gave you what you asked for. And now you stand here, not because you miss me, but because you lost control." Her voice cracked for the first time. I thought you'd leave the house to me one day." I shook my head slowly. Love is not inherited like furniture, Lauren. It's earned. And you stopped earning it a long time ago. Her lawyer closed his folder. Mrs. Collins, I apologize for the intrusion. This is no longer a legal matter. He walked away quietly. Lauren stood there trembling, not with anger this time, but realization. For what it's worth, she whispered, I didn't think you'd actually do it. For what it's worth, I replied, neither did I, until you made me. But even after the law stepped aside, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived in my mailbox. Not from Lauren, but from someone I hadn't spoken to since Paul's funeral. After everything, after the house, the silence, the slammed doors, I thought the story was finally settling. But then came the letter. From someone I never expected. It arrived on a Thursday morning, no fanfare, no knock. Just a simple white envelope slipped into my mailbox, the kind that looks harmless, until your hands start trembling when you read the name. Return address? Margaret Hayes, my late husband Paul's younger sister. I hadn't spoken to her since Paul's funeral, not because we fought. Margaret was never cruel. She was quiet, observant, the kind of woman who said little but noticed everything. When Lauren rushed ahead planning flowers and guest lists, Margaret stood beside me, holding my hand in the church pew, and then life separated us. Widowhood can be isolating. I sat down at the small dining table in my apartment, opened the envelope with careful fingers, and unfolded the letter. Evelyn, I heard whispers. About you selling the house. I don't believe in gossip. I believe in hearing the truth from the source. If you're willing, I'd like to visit. Not to judge, but to listen. Margaret. I must have read it 3 times. No accusations, no pity. Just an invitation. I wrote back the same day. Come by Sunday afternoon. I'll make tea. Evelyn. When Sunday came, I set the table with 2 cups and a plate of shortbread cookies, my mother's recipe, the same kind that once filled my old kitchen with warmth. At 3 p.m., the doorbell rang. Margaret stood there, hair streaked with silver, soft eyes full of questions she didn't force out loud. She stepped inside, and for a moment we just held hands, not as in-laws, but as 2 women holding the same ghosts. She sat, took a sip of tea, and said gently, Tell me everything, only if you want to. And for the first time, I did. I told her about Lauren's party, the broken glass, the threats, the forged papers, the night I packed my suitcase, the sale, the silence. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, there were tears, but not the loud, dramatic kind, just quiet ones, like rain against a window pane. I always knew she was proud, Margaret said slowly, but I never thought she'd forget who you are. She didn't just forget, I whispered. She erased. Margaret gently placed her hand over mine, and you remembered. We talked about Paul, his laughter, his awful singing in the shower, the way he used to fix everything with duct tape and a smile. For a moment, the room felt full of him. Before leaving, Margaret stood by the door and said something I didn't expect. Family isn't blood, Evelyn. It's who stands beside you when the world doesn't. Then she hugged me, tight, like someone who still believed I was worth holding on to. And as the door closed behind her, I realized, maybe I hadn't lost everything after all. But peace didn't last long because someone else showed, up next week. No letter this time, just a knock. And a familiar voice saying, Mom, please, hear me out. Some doors, once closed, are meant to stay closed. But what do you do when the person knocking is the same one who pushed you out? It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon, the kind where the world feels still. No traffic, no ringing phone, just the gentle hum of the city outside my balcony. I was tending to my little herb garden, mint, rosemary, a touch of lavender, when someone buzzed from the building entrance. I didn't rush. The intercom crackled. Mom? It's me. Please, it's important. Lauren. Her voice wasn't the polished, clipped tone she used with her guests or her lawyer. This was different, fractured, hesitant, almost afraid. For a moment, I didn't speak. I let the silence stretch, long enough for her to wonder if I'd even heard her. Please, she said again. I just want to talk. I'm not here to fight. I pressed the button. You can say what you want from there. There was a pause, then a shaky breath. I don't have anywhere to go. Eric left. His family won't take me in. My friends won't answer. I'm staying in a motel off Highway 17. I don't have a job anymore, and people found out about the house. Ah, there it was. Not remorse, consequence. She continued, "Everyone's talking. They're saying I got thrown out of my own mother's home. They're laughing at me. I can't walk into the grocery store without hearing whispers." I waited. "And I know I hurt you," she said, voice cracking, "but I'm still your daughter, and you're still my mom." A part of me wanted to run to her, to open the door, to hold her like I used to when thunderstorms scared her as a child. But another part, the part she hardened, stayed still. "Do you remember," I said softly, "when you told me this wasn't my home anymore? When you picked up the phone to call the police on me?" Silence. "And now," I continued, "you want back into a life you pushed me out of." Her breath hitched. I was angry. "I thought you'd always be there. I thought that I'd never leave," I finished for her. She didn't deny it. "I'm not asking for the house," she whispered. "I know that's gone. I don't want you gone too." The air between us, thick with years of love, betrayal, sacrifice, and silence, felt heavy enough to touch. "I forgive you," I said at last. I heard her exhale, soft and relieved. "But," I added, firm and calm, "forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean going back." Her voice broke. "So, what now?" "You find who you are without taking from others, and I live the years I have left without being someone's burden or punching bag." Then I asked her something she didn't expect. "Do you love me because I'm your mother, or because I'm the last safety net you have left?" She didn't answer, and in that silence, I finally knew she walked away that day. But that wasn't the true ending, because what happened next wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about legacy. Revenge ends a story, but peace? Peace begins a new one. Lauren didn't say another word after that question. She just stood there on the other side of the locked gate, shoulders trembling beneath a coat that wasn't warm enough. For the first time, she didn't yell, she didn't threaten, she didn't call me dramatic, she just nodded and walked away. No storm, no dramatic collapse, no grand apology, just quiet steps fading into the city noise. I closed the curtain, not out of anger, but out of acceptance. That night, I made tea, mint, like Paul used to. I sat by my window on the 24th floor, watching headlights flow like rivers through the streets, for the first time in a long time, maybe ever. I didn't feel like I was waiting for someone to understand me. I already did. The weeks that followed weren't loud or triumphant. They were soft, gentle. I planted more herbs, started writing my story, shared my first audio recording online, not with bitterness but with truth. I titled it simply, "For the Women Who Stayed Quiet Too Long." I thought no one would listen, but they did. Messages began pouring in. "I'm 72. My daughter did the same to me. Thank you for speaking. I'm 29, and I treated my mom terribly. I'm calling her now. I thought I was alone. I'm not anymore." It wasn't fame. It wasn't even forgiveness. It was connection. One morning, a small envelope arrived at my door. No return address, just my name, written in shaky handwriting. I recognized immediately, Lauren. Inside was a single-page letter. "Mom, I'm working now, renting a small room. It's not much, but it's mine. I'm not asking to come back. I'm just asking if someday, not now, but someday, I can sit with you and talk, not as the daughter who demanded everything, but as a woman who finally understands what it cost you. If you say no, I'll understand. But if you ever want to talk, I'll be here. Lauren." I placed the letter in my drawer next to Paul's photo. I didn't write back, not yet. Healing isn't a race, so if you're listening to this and you've ever felt unseen in your own home, remember this: silence isn't always surrender. Sometimes it's preparation. Sometimes it's power. Sometimes it's a woman packing her suitcase at 3 a.m., carrying not jewelry or clothes, but deeds, documents, and the last pieces of her dignity. And sometimes, just sometimes, that woman doesn't go back to the house she built. She builds a new one, not out of bricks, but out of peace. If you felt this story in your bones, if you've ever been told you don't belong in the life you built, subscribe to Grandma True Stories. Because here, aging isn't the end. It's the beginning of being heard. Turn on notifications. Don't miss the next voice that refuses to stay silent. And if you have a story, I'll help you tell it.